There's usually a feedback we ask or a survey at the end that is usually sent out the day after. Make sure you make note of that if you want to go into other ways to build staff morale, and maybe we can whip up a webinar to kind of explore some other ways to build staff morale besides the recognition and rewards. So we'll just take in one small slice today, because otherwise this webinar could last for a week. So the objectives today is learning why it's important to give recognitions and rewards, learn how to give it in a way that's appropriate and sustainable, and then that'll become clear. And then I'll just talk about some low cost ways that people always think you have to have these big expensive things to show you appreciate, but really you don't have to. All right, we'll start with the big question. We got three big ones: the why, how, and what. So the first one when giving recognitions and reward is, why do we do it? Why is it important to do? First thing is, whether it's your employees, your coworkers, your volunteers, the first thing we need to discuss is why it's important to give it. Much of this might be very common sense or common knowledge to many of you, but just in case there are a few who don't know why it's important or cannot see the impact it may have on your organization and its people, this is a good starting point. There is still today in some organizations, in some businesses, whatever, that believe that people should just be able to get on and do their work and they don't need any recognition, they don't need any praise, no attaboy, attagirls type of thing. That's a very old way of thinking, because research has shown over and over and over again that system does not consistently work. So if you're well, people should just do their job and pull themselves up by their bootstraps type of person, and you're managing people, I would really highly suggest you listen closely, because I would not be surprised if that's not really working out for you. So first of all, the very basic thing: people are not needy. They are not high maintenance. Rather, every human being wants to feel appreciated. They want to be appreciated for the work they do. Yes, you're giving them a paycheck. I agree. You definitely are. And that should be rewarded enough, some people believe. But the thing is, what you'll get from that is just their bare minimum. They'll just do their job. Now, in the nonprofit realm, which I think probably most people listening in, because that's what we kind of serve as nonprofit organizations, we know that if that is not enough, the monetary benefit for working for the average nonprofit is very different than the for-profit world, and people don't go to work for nonprofits just for a paycheck. Otherwise, they can probably make better money elsewhere. So there has to be more. So going back to why it's important. When you have low morale, it comes with a really high price tag for your organization. The Gallup organization, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, estimates that there are over 22 million actively disengaged employees that cost the American economy over $350 billion per year in lost productivity. And that productivity is lost through absenteeism, illness, and other problems that result when employees are simply unhappy and disengaged from their work. That is huge, just huge. So yes, people can come and do their work, but if you notice your staff are missing a lot of time, they're kind of always frequently sick, they have this excuse or that excuse, right? Things aren't, getting done, or why they're not showing up or putting in their best effort, there might be a deeper underlying reason. Another recent study by Accenture reported that there's over 43% of the workforce cites the lack of recognition, specifically cites the lack of recognition as the reason for their unhappiness. Yeah, so you could solve a lot of problems just by recognizing employees. And again, in the same report, 55% of the employees said praise and attention from a supervisor made them feel cared for by the company and that their own well-being was cared about. They ranked that praise and attention from a supervisor was more important, and they ranked it higher in their satisfaction than money, benefits, or special events on an organizational level. So if you're relying on, well, we hold an appreciation for our volunteers or staff once a year at this banquet, that's not a bad thing to do. However, it's not as effective as some other things we'll talk about. Biggest point I want to get across this whole webinar is this: people do not quit jobs. They quit their bosses. It is overwhelmingly the number one reason why people leave a job is because of their boss, their supervisor. So if you are a supervisor or looking to be one someday, how you take this information, what you do with it, and how you create that culture and that environment with your organization has a huge, huge effect on your success and on your ability to retain good employees, people that you really want. Because remember, it's not the bad employees that jump ship, that you as a boss would say, well, I wouldn't mind if so-and-so left because they're not really productive or they're a negative. They don't leave, they stick around. Who you end up losing are the best because they have options and they know what they want. So again, people do not quit jobs, they quit their bosses. The quote by Mark Twain here, he said once that he could live for 2 months on a good compliment, just showing the importance of that kind of compliment. When people feel valued, they become more engaged in what they're doing. In the nonprofit realm, again, for our employees, we have to have engaged employees. We have to have people who believe in the mission with a great passion for what we do, because again, just be honest, the monetary benefits aren't always there. It's people work in nonprofits for the passion, for the mission of trying to solve whatever it is issue or social issue that they're trying to combat or help people work through in our society. So if you want engaged people, if you want to have them engaged in their work and actively tackling those things, they need to feel valued. Otherwise, they're just going to simply do their job and at the bare minimum. Okay, so that's why we need to do this. But now let's talk about, so how do we start this process? You might be a brand new supervisor or boss and you're going, I want to set this from the ground, from the first day, I want to build this culture. Kudos to you, that's very important. Let's get to work on it. For those who've been longtime manager, maybe you're on this because you're saying, wow, my office, my staff, the morale is horrible. How do I change this? So that's a little trickier, and it doesn't mean it's hopeless. Absolutely not. There's baby steps involved. So let's just take a tackle at some of the ways we can start building this culture where you can recognize and compliment and praise your employees so they feel valued. All right, first of all, the key to this one, the how, is having a system. You need to create a system. And that means if you put it down on paper if you need to, or in a document or a flow chart or whatever it is that you can do for yourself, you need to have a system. And the reason why a system is important is because consistency. It has to be consistent. The moment you start going haphazard with your recognition and praise, and it just, no one knows when it's going to show up or for what reason it's going to show up, or then people start going, it's so arbitrary, it doesn't make any sense. And the one time you forget or you fail to acknowledge somebody for something you've done, but you did it for their coworker, you will end up killing any goodwill and that positive feeling that you have built up over time by doing these actions. So again, keep consistent, have a plan. I guess that's the system is a plan. Have a plan for how you're going to do this and how you're going to make sure you keep it going with your employees. Because again, if you think one compliment is going to be enough to have someone go for good, like, well, I gave you a compliment last year at your review. That's the average person. That's not going to be it. There are some, and we'll talk about them, who don't need as much of this. But then again, hopefully you'll be learning that. So the question about availability becomes, can it be given if earned? In other words, it doesn't, if you can't really earn it, and they're setting the standards so high that it's unattainable, or is yeah, that's the big one, is can you actually earn this? So if you throw out, say, this is something we'll do, and I'd like to recognize if someone reaches this benchmark or does this kind of thing, can everyone earn that? Is that actually available to be earned? The visibility is a question of making sure that people understand and know. I mean, some people, they want to have their coworkers look at them and say, wow, good job, that's right, you know, they just gave you that, that's a great job. We're all in this together if you have a team approach. So how visible is the reward going to be? And sometimes we'll talk about in a little bit, it doesn't need to be visible at all. But again, if they're going to be system-wide, organizational-wide recognition, make sure there's a visibility that they're recognized. Does the recognition depend on performance? This one's tricky too, because in the business world, there's a lot of recognition and rewards depending on performance. You can think of sales goals, or managers get bonuses for performance or whatever. The nonprofit world is a little more difficult to measure that, but your organization, whatever it is, however unique is what you do, there might be a way you can encourage people to reach certain levels, and then there's a recognition or reward that goes along with obtaining that. The tough one about that is, and we'll talk about that in just a second here, is can everyone get that? There's the availability question. If there's a performance recognition or reward available, is everyone in the organization able to actually obtain that? So in other words, if it's just for serving a certain population, but you have office staff who don't do that kind of work, is there a different type of reward or recognition they can earn for their work, rather than just leaving it to one certain group of workers and no one else can actually obtain it? So the other part about here on this slide with timeliness, the idea that make sure that when you give out praise, compliments, recognition, reward, that it can be distributed in a timely fashion after the event takes place. This is kind of like behavior modification, if anyone's familiar with that kind of thing. You have to give the feedback like right when the people can understand and realize what it's from. In other words, don't wait for 3 months and say, oh, by the way, this person did something back in January, and I want to thank her for that effort. And everyone's going, it's April? Why are we talking about something done in January? So, which is much more saying, hey, last week, you know, Susie did this, and I really appreciate the extra effort. I just want to tell her, you know, recognize her in front of all you guys that she really stepped up and went above and beyond. That's much more timely, and it's in people's minds, not waiting for this big long gap where no one remembers what you're talking about. So make sure it can be distributed. It means more, it makes more sense to everyone. So after it's earned. Flexibility. This is about making it personal. And why this is important: bigger organizations, I already can hear the complaint. Yes, this is much tougher when you are overseeing a lot of employees. However, that does not mean it cannot be done. Small organizations, easier to tailor to the needs of the individual or what their likes are. The better you know your staff and the people who work for you, the better you know how to give them the recognition and praise they need to keep them motivated and going forward and keep them highly valued and productive. Because not everyone accepts praise and compliments and recognition the same way. And we have to be very careful that a gift or a reward or whatever is not misinterpreted. And I'll give you at least a couple stories. One, my father was in management at the mines for many years, and he was a brand new manager, excited to create this culture where all the miners felt appreciated, which was not very typical in that environment. And so he burst into the break room during lunch one day, and there's about 20 to 30 miners in there. And he turns to a guy and just starts praising him up. This guy went above and beyond today. He did more than I asked him to. This was great. Blah, blah, blah. At the end of lunch, they were leaving the break room, and the guy who sat there, the guy he'd just been praising up for 5 minutes or so during lunch, and walked to my dad and looked in the face and said, if you ever do that again, I will make your life miserable as our boss. My dad was stunned, slapped in the face. Like, why in the world? He said, I have a reputation out here of being disagreeable and a problem. If you start saying stuff like that, people will start wondering. So in other words, the public recognition was the last thing this guy wanted to have. Now, was he proud of the work he did, that step up and went above and beyond for my dad in that moment? Yes, he was proud of that work. He just didn't want anyone else to know. Now you're saying that's kind of a weird extreme case, but some people are like that. The public acknowledgement would be embarrassing to them, and actually will now do the opposite what you hoped it would be. You're bragging them up in front of everyone, saying how great they did, and inside they're just going, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you're doing this to me. I want to die. This is so embarrassing. So if you know your people, if you know your individuals, you'll know who wants to have that call out so everyone can see them and they feel they can get the pat on the back. But the other person who's way more personal might rather have you come one-on-one and talk to them, or give them a note or something that's more private, because they don't want that spotlight shown on them even for a moment. So know your people. Another thing that can be misunderstood or misrepresented is this is a great case that I had when I was running an organization, and I had an office manager, an assistant that helped me out, and I thought it was really cool. It was her birthday, so I thought I'd just give her some flowers. Okay, which is, it's pretty normal, right? Flowers, you're doing a great job. Well, one of my staff people came in, saw that, and said, hey, what's the flowers for? And my office manager said, well, she said, oh, it's from Chad. Isn't that great? So now the first thing is, here's an environment that I've created. I thought everyone would get it. It's fine. And the guy comes to my office and says, why are you giving her flowers? I'm like, what do you mean? It's her birthday. He goes, oh, okay. I said, what does that mean? He goes, well, I just got a little concerned, she's married, you're married. Why are you giving her flowers? I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? So the importance, now it's a ridiculous example, but I was like, I couldn't believe he even went there. His mind went there. But she's my subordinate. I'm the boss. I'm giving this female coworker of mine flowers, and to make sure it's well known what the purpose of the flowers were, that there was not some other reason behind it. So again, choosing the appropriate and the best way to thank someone and appreciate someone is important, because you never want it to be misinterpreted or misunderstood. So yeah, be careful. Just know what make a plan, have a system. The reversibility is a really interesting one that was brought to my attention. And then what the slide says is, once given, can a recognition be taken back or not given again? The trap here is, you set a goal or something that someone in the organization can obtain, and the question is there enough of it to go around? In other words, this is the funniest story I've heard. Someone said, in a corporate environment, let's just say it's a one-story building, all right? And the goal for the best producer in the organization is a corner office. Once you hit 4, that reward cannot be given again, because there's only 4 corners. See the example there. So if that's a great goal, that's a great thing to obtain, but if it's meant to be company or organizational wide, can it keep on being given? You can give the best parking spot for someone who performs really high, or as a way to say thank you or recognize somebody. But again, how many times can you give the best parking spot out? Or is it only for a certain amount of time, or etc.? So when thinking about what you're going to do to acknowledge, make sure that there's not such a limited supply, or maybe it's something that's time limited, so that you don't get yourself backed into a corner of going, oops, yeah, I can't give you that because there are no more left. So just be thinking again, really plan out. This takes planning. If you thought your job as a manager was just to look for bottom line, you're forgetting your role as the of the human resource, and the importance for you to build that in your people and to know and try to keep them around. And it takes time to plan these things out. So you need to make sure you have a plan. So there's some of the hows. Now the third question we have is the what. So the what is, so what are some of my suggestions? What are some ideas? And you'll see there's multiple slides here, and I'll just tell stories about a few of these or whatever. So what do you do? The first thing I would say above and beyond. I don't know of a single person, I do not know of a single person who does not appreciate verbal praise or encouragement. That means a sincere thank you. I want to really push that second half of that statement, that first bullet point, a sincere thank you. If you are creating a system to building your staff's morale of giving out recognition and rewards, and it is insincere, your people will see through it in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. There is a huge chasm of a difference between a sincere thank you and one saying, yep, thanks, out of obligation, or this form letter that you write the same thank you every single time to your staff people. And so they all match, compare notes and go, oh, look at that. This is exactly the same wording. The only thing different on it was they changed our name on top. Do you understand the difference? That's a huge difference. Make sure you're sincere. If you don't feel like you can be sincere in the thanks and showing that recognition, it's wiser and better to not do it at all. Then that's a different issue you can tackle within yourself of why you're not feeling like it's important or necessary, but make sure you're sincere. You can actually lose people quicker by insincerity than to not praise or give recognition at all. So your sincerity and being genuine is of the utmost importance. Okay, so another big thing to do before I read through some of the other items on here is, again, going back to knowing your employees. You can, as their boss, as their managers, ask them what motivates them. What are some things that they like? What are things they enjoy? What's important to them? And if you know these things and start cataloging these in your mind or keeping a little notes to yourself, you'll know the best way to motivate them, the best way to show that they're appreciated and valued. Again, smaller staff, much easier to figure out. Larger one, maybe not so much, but you can take that time, whether it's just a few minutes, to find a little bit about them, find what they're into, find if they like to have a public recognition, find if they're more private. This next one is pretty easy and anyone can do it and very little cost, is writing a note or a letter. Whether it's handwritten is really special these days because no one does it. But you can send the email, you can leave a voicemail, whatever it takes. I just want to share one that it literally just happened yesterday. Yesterday I got a note, and it was from an event that happened a few weeks ago, and I did help facilitate a discussion at a board of directors meeting for an organization, and the evening went really well. And one of the board members for that organization, I just received the note yesterday, and it is the biggest encouragement, just saying the manner I held myself, the professionalism, how I helped guide them through the process. The person even mentioned that I really listened to and validated the points of the people trying to give points. All these words that she used, and it was a small card, no bigger than a 3x5 little index card. But she wrote this stuff, and I cannot tell you how much that changed my day. Now, is there anything that she wrote in that card that I haven't heard before from others? Nope. Not trying to brag. It's just I've heard these things before. But the thing is, I hadn't heard it from her. She happens not only to serve on that board that I did the facilitation for, but she's actually one of our board members here at GLCYD. So not only does it mean a lot that she loved my presentation and my facilitation at the other board that she served on, but she was saying it as a board member of the organization that I worked for, that I represented us well. You know how great that feels? That feels amazing. Does a board member have to take the time out to write that kind of note to one of the employees of the organization they serve on their board? No, but she did, and it meant the world. It's actually sitting in my office right now. I can look up at my little shelf and it's right there. And I'll keep that for a long time. Anytime I'm having a rough day, I'm going to look back at that thing and say, no, you know what? People do value what I do. I am good at what I do. See, one small little note card, and it made a huge difference to me. Doesn't take a lot of effort sometimes, folks. Just you need to do it. You need to take the time to do it. Sometimes you can post a thank you note or a sign somewhere. This happens. This can happen in a lot of different ways. But if you have an office setting where you can slap a sign on, whether it's celebrating someone's birthday or an accomplishment or whatever, I've come to my office in the morning on the day of my birthday and had it completely, I'll call it this, my coworkers wouldn't, but completely trashed with balloons and crepe paper, streamers, and all this stuff, whatever. And okay, it was a mess to clean up. It was hilarious, and it was a mess. But talk about feeling valued, that they would take time to totally crazy up my office just so I know I'm appreciated on my birthday. So little things like that. If you want to be able to give a longer break, extend a break. If they get a typical half-hour lunch, maybe you say, you know what, you've been doing a great job lately. We had these couple things we overcame this week with our clients or people we're serving. Let's take an hour today. Doesn't cost you anything, but a half-hour productivity might mean the world to your employee. Maybe an extra break. Maybe again, if it was something really big and a lot of extra hours outside of work time, you can offer some kind of comp time if your organization allows for that. Casual dress day is always a fun one. If there's not a lot of business to be done or outside appointments, to say to the team, you know what, we worked great. We accomplished this event or task. Tomorrow, jean day. You can come in dressed casually. It's something small, and you think, what's the big deal? But it means a lot to people when they can get that kind of like, it's like almost like you're getting away with something. It's like, yeah, we get to have casual day, jeans. And people just really eat that kind of stuff up. It goes to building that kind of culture where they feel like they're appreciated, and there are some kind of concessions given to be able to loosen up a little bit. Sometimes if you have a newsletter that goes company-wide, you could recognize specific things that people have accomplished. The one-on-one lunch doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be formal, whatever. It's just a chance to say, in fact, in our organization, our boss will do this, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee at Starbucks or something. And that's a lot. It gives me a voice, gives me a chance to hear from her and give a chance for me to say what I need to say. And it doesn't have to be super long, but just having her ear for a short amount of time for that one-on-one is a great opportunity. And again, it makes me feel valued because I have her time. This is a common theme you're going to hear throughout the rest of these, is some of this stuff just takes time, and we have to make it a choice to put in the time. This homemade treats, sweets and snacks, you may work in some organizations where there are some rules about this kind of stuff, bringing in stuff, but the average place, people are bringing stuff in, you know, coworkers are sharing stuff or whatever. But I want to again tell another story about two different situations. One was the company I was working for would sometimes spring for lunch, and so their lunch be provided, and so everyone's like, okay, lunch, great, we'll eat lunch. And then the boss one day brought in a whole box full of homemade cookies that his wife had made. The previous day we had lunch bought by the company, which is like, okay, lunch bought, thank you. Homemade cookies from the boss's wife, and you would have thought it was Christmas. The response from people, why? Because they like cookies so much more than they like a free lunch? No. The fact that it was from the boss, the fact that his wife took time to make these cookies for the employee. Do you see the personal touch here? That's what made it special. It wasn't because of what it is or the quantity or whatever. It was because the boss took something personal, something his wife made, and brought it in and gave it to everyone. And they thought like, wow, this is really a special treat. So that personal touch is important. I've used this many different times, but it's not just this personal treat. It could be anything. It may be something you do. Maybe you're handy or whatever, and you can bring in something that's, again, not anything huge, not something that's going to cost you an arm and a leg, but just some small token of something, the talent you have, or something personal that you can pass on to your people. Means a lot more than simply saying, here's a $5 gift card. That being said, we'll talk about that. That's actually not a bad thing too. The get out of a project or work card, Again, this one you have to know your culture. You have to know that if there's going to be people who abuse this or not. But it's a great opportunity that if there is a project or a type of work that some employee just does not like, it's part of their job, it's part of what the team has to do, but you know they hate it, they just dread it. So they can earn a get out of the project card. So they can just say, you know what, I'm stepping back from this one. I'm playing my card that I earned last quarter for this or that. It's a fun way. Now, if you have a big enough staff, that can work. If you have two of you, that probably will not be one of the choices you choose. But if there is that, that's a great way to do it. A get out of work or get out of. So case in point, we have shared garbage duties here at our organization. So once a week, it's someone's job to kind of make sure everyone's gathered up and gets to the dumpster. So that could be a perfect place to say, no, I'm giving up my week. Someone else has to take it because I got my get out of work card. So pass off that fun duty to somebody else. All right, some other things. The day pass, that's tricky. That could be like a day off. It also could be what the second one is that you take work off site. Maybe you can get, if you work in an environment where you can do some of your work off site, maybe that's a type of reward that you could give to an employee. A field trip could be a collective event that you as a group go on, whether it's, you can actually, remember, you can have a field trip that actually accomplishes work, but still gets you out of the office. And that's kind of like a change of pace, a change of scenery, but a way you can kind of keep people engaged and excited to do stuff. And you can throw company parties. Again, remember, it doesn't have to be expensive if people are seeing dollar signs. Because I'll tell you right now, if you say we're going to take an hour out of our day and throw a little company party on a Friday afternoon, and could everyone bring something to pass? How many people do you think in your organization will say, nah, are you kidding me? People love to show that kind of stuff. They love to bring, so they love to gather together. So again, it may not even cost the company much money, and everyone pitches in and just has an hour of networking, socializing, getting to know each other, building that team atmosphere. The next part is the gifts, and these are tricky. You need to make sure you know your organization. Some have rules about such things. The size of the gift is important because you can't get to a point where it's of such monetary value that it's looked as like something like a bonus or other additional compensation. But there are small things you can do as a boss to just kind of, again, show appreciation to somebody. I mentioned the beverage. Coffee around here, I mean, probably in a lot of organizations is a classic one. If someone drops a coffee on your desk, say, hey, I appreciate you, thanks, here's this, the small gift cards. Sometimes flowers are appropriate. Sometimes if you're in a certain field of work, a gift of a magazine subscription that makes sense. So gas cards, car wash, all these different small, but again, these are small monetary value, but they say a lot more than their monetary value by the effort and by just taking that chance and that opportunity to share that they're appreciated. Some other unique ones we brainstormed up is bring your pet to work day. Again, make sure you check with your lease, your office building, whatever it is, because that may not be possible, but what a fun day to have. And actually, if you've read anything recently about research, there's a lot of research on the positiveness of having especially dogs in the workplace and how much it brings calmness and happiness to employees. So maybe that could be a reward to work towards for your group. You could have a bulletin board that kind of highlights accomplishments or recognizes employees. You could do an employee of the month. The warning about the employee of the month, because there's been movies and whole comedy sketches that have been created about employee of the month. It's difficult to keep those sustainable as far as their impact. In other words, I think they can be valuable to have an employee of the month to highlight people and talk about their contributions for your organization. It's sometimes difficult to combat the cynicism and negativity that over time that happens with the employee of the month. So just be careful, or think of creative or clever ways, or brainstorm with some people that are either in or outside your organization who are also supervising people on how to keep that fresh, because you don't want to fall into that routine like, all right, here it is, we have to have an employee of the month. because that attitude will seep through and people will feel that. So even the recipients of that will no longer value that designation. So going back to that being genuine and sincere, it's an important part in any of these ways that you're going to show appreciation. Building up a fun, we have a Keurig here in the office. It's just awesome. So there's one of those small little things that you can do that brightens people's day. Late day Mondays or leave early Fridays. Again, you're giving up maybe an hour or so of someone's work time because you can't, again, give financial recognition or rewards, but that feels great. Usually I know here at GLCYD, our boss, we have a Christmas gathering every year, sometime in December, and we'll do a fun event together on typically a Friday. And at the end of the event, even though we all know this is coming, we all wait to hear the boss tell us, okay, you can have the rest of the day off. I'm serious. I've been here 4 years. I know it's coming. That's just what she's kind of set in place as a culture, but we're just waiting for her to see it. It's just, there's something about the boss saying, here's your get out of work for the rest of the afternoon. And usually it's literally an hour and a half, 2 hours tops that we're getting on that Friday, but it's huge. It's like we're waiting, like little kids waiting for the school bell. It's like, yeah, please just tell us we get the rest of the day off. But it means so much, and it keeps the environment here very positive and happy. And that's just happened once a year. I mentioned potlucks before, bringing in stuff and sharing, remembering people's birthdays and anniversaries is cool. I mentioned the special parking spot too as a possibility. Some places have assigned parking, some places don't, so that may not work for everybody. But the simple remembrance of birthdays and anniversaries, I think, is another thing. It takes very little effort. Your HR person, whoever holds those, can tell you exactly what all those dates are. And a simple acknowledgement that someone's celebrating a birthday. I've actually had people who were, a new manager came in and started doing this, and they were shocked, like anyone would remember my birthday, even though logically it's like, well, yeah, it's on your application, it's in your HR file. But the fact that they were acknowledged that they're celebrating a birthday meant everything. It's like, well, no one's ever said anything before about my birthday, so this felt really cool. Something small, but it could mean the world to someone. So look for these opportunities, come up with a system, know what you're going to do, and look for opportunities wherever you can find them on how to encourage, support, and value the people who work for you, because they will produce better. Research has shown that over and over and over again. If you're happy with an environment where people are just coming to work, doing their job, clocking out and done with it, and they don't care, that attitude even right there is just simply doing their job, comes across in the people you serve. They can tell the difference. Your clients, customers, population you serve, whoever it might be, they can tell the difference between someone who is passionate about their job and helping others and the person who's just doing a job. So if you want that environment where you have people passionate about what they're doing, excited to come to work and do their job, wanting to help, even if it's in a tough environment, even if you're working with people with a lot of problems, that does not mean your employees have to be sucked down into that. And one of the ways that you can help them is by this encouragement, by this valuing, to tell them how important they are for your success. And finding those small little ways, whatever means is important to them, to let them know that they're appreciated. Some cautions, and this one's specifically about, I'm going to start off with volunteers. I haven't talked a lot of these things can work for volunteers as well as for paid staff. And again, nonprofits usually enlist a lot of volunteer help. But the number one thing about volunteers, because I've heard it so many organizations, we need to figure out a way to appreciate our volunteers or show them we need to have a volunteer banquet to recognize them. And those are good things. But the very first bullet point is key. Volunteers do not volunteer to receive rewards. And I would even throw on their recognition. In fact, we celebrate volunteers at least once a year at their nonprofit conference by celebrating in different categories volunteers from across the UP. And some people are very hesitant to accept the reward, and even furthermore, very hesitant to come to the program and speak, because they don't want, that's not why they volunteered. was to get an award for being a volunteer of the year. They did it because they had a heart for whatever that mission was they're serving. So remember that. In fact, I've seen sometimes volunteers write on surveys, my ability and my opportunity to serve is my reward. So remember that when we're quick to kind of find things to do to praise our volunteers or reward them or whatever, recognize them, that sometimes just being able to do what they do with you and help your population you're serving is reward enough. Careful of giving any gift of value to rewards, because again, when you're talking about consistent gift of value, monetary value, it can lead to a slippery slope of them being viewed as an employee. This is where you want to make sure you're keeping legal. So if you're giving consistent gifts of, let's just say, gift cards to the same volunteers over and over and over again, an IRS person can look at that and go, that's compensation. That's not a reward or recognition, that's compensation. So be careful when giving things of monetary value to volunteers. But again, giving praise, encouragement is one of the best ways to keep your volunteers. It doesn't have to be hugely public. It can be one-on-one. The biggest mistake, I ran an event years back that had 2,000 to 3,000 teenagers in attendance on an annual basis. So you can imagine it took literally close to, it was well over 100 plus volunteers to make that weekend event happen. And I remember one year we had this big drop off in volunteers. I'm like, what in the world just happened here? I mean, why did we all of a sudden have all these mainstays for the last several years and boom, we just lost a good 20 people. So he dug into it a little deeper, asked the person who was involved with volunteers, and came to find out somehow, some way, our system failed us. And there was a group that failed to be recognized at all. I mean, what I mean recognized, we never did big public recognitions. They never got the simple thank you from someone on the leadership team for that event. And that simple mistake cost us people for at least that 1 year. They stepped back and wouldn't do it because they were hurt. So the importance of making sure you say thank you can go so long, such a far way, and sometimes it can have negative effects. So if that's the way it is for volunteers, how do you think it is for your employees who you work with day in and day out? When they're doing a job and sometimes they're doing more than their job and they never hear a single thank you. They never hear a single, you're doing a good job. I'll tell you right now, I've actually said this flat out to my boss since I started working here, and I think she knows this now. I love hearing her say to me, good job. I do. It's one of my favorite things to hear from anybody is when she comes and tells me, hey, I heard from so-and-so about what you did in that, good job. Simple. It takes what, 10 seconds of her time? It means the world to me. So little things. Going back to volunteers really quickly, when they incur expenses, make sure you reimburse. Otherwise, try to avoid that monetary stuff, but definitely reimburse them if your budget allows, and that's an understanding. If they do incur expenses, make sure you be able to reimburse them, because what you don't want volunteers to feel like is they're being taken advantage of. Okay, and I started off my personal story from just this yesterday. Remember that a simple thank you, especially from a board or your CEO / executive director, coordinator, whatever the top person in your organization, goes a long way with both volunteers and your staff. So sometimes that simple thank you, handwritten note, quick phone call, whatever it might be from somebody, goes a super long way. And if it's an organization, especially if it's an event that you've done, break it up. Ask your board to step up. Ask other parts of management or the team to step up. If you're thinking volunteers, have members of your team, your paid staff, break up the list of people and make sure a personal thank you is given. But that's important too, again, for employees, not just volunteers. But that's why I want to touch a little bit on volunteers. So we have about 10 minutes left. And I know Wolfie's been listening in. I don't know if you've been sending any questions, but if you have any questions right now about how to show recognition rewards, concerns with that, go ahead and type any of those in. And then I know Karen will let me know if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them sufficiently. So Karen, did we have any questions at this stage?
Chad, right now we do not.
Okay.
How would you feel about if anybody has any other comments or ideas of some of the things they've done. I know a lot of creative folks out there, and we got a bunch of you on, so um, I don't think we could have thought of everything.
Right. No, that is great. Thank you, Karen. That's awesome. So if you don't have any questions, does anyone have any other ways that you've found have been effective in giving recognition, showing your team, your staff people that you value them? Can anyone have any ideas? And then I know Karen, if she receives any, she'll read them off and let us know. But I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've had some of yourself. Just wait for like 30 seconds to let people type some stuff in.
All right, we've got something. Oh, we got a
Oh, good.
couple of them. I'm
Great.
gonna need my glasses. Okay. Oh, this is from Mary Niemela up in the Keweenaw. Hi, Mary. Just an idea that I have been doing is to put a quote on their pay stubs. Oh, I like that.
Ooh, nice. Inspiring them as well. That's good. Great. Did you have another
Okay,
one?
yes, we've got a couple here.
Okay.
Corey Holcomb asked, "Is this PowerPoint available as a handout afterwards?" I believe it
Yes.
will. It be on the website?
What'll happen is usually Victoria, who is out sick today, but I think she'll be able to put this all together. Usually it's the day after. She'll send out an email with a link to the recording of this. And I think she does. I'll double check with her. I'll see if the slides can be included as well. And then she'll also ask for your feedback. So if you don't get the slides, I think you mentioned that was Corey, just let us know and I'll make sure you get a copy of those as well.
Okay. And now from Jill Rady, who I was lucky enough to see yesterday. She said, "I just want to say that your comments at the beginning, Chad, that sincerity is the key, is
Mhm.
so important." And I agree on that. You can do a little bit of this and, bring some candy bars, but the way you treat people still comes through and is the most important thing. Consistency with that.
Yes, because here's the difference between the two, an insincere and insincere, is that one, people will feel like you're trying to buy them off. And that is a dirty feeling. I'm just going to use that word. It's the best word that popped in my mind. It
Mhm.
really is. Like no one wants to be bought off or paid off or thought, well, if I throw stuff at them, they'll be happy.
Well,
Man,
yeah,
that's
or
a
it'll
terrible
be
feeling.
okay. Yeah, it'll be okay
Yeah,
to treat them like whatever.
right. Right. So
Okay.
when you're doing that, those little things, because again, that same little candy bar brought to my table that has a little sticky note on it that says, hey, good job. Okay, that
That's
means
funny.
great rather than just saying, oh, here's some candy. So again, sincerity and being genuine is so important.
Okay, and Mary wanted to just clarify that the quotes she writes on the pay stubs, some are inspiring them and some are funny. Love to
Nice.
laugh. And I know in
Good.
our environment, laughter is probably the best part of the day because
Yeah.
we are a bunch of clowns here.
And I would say this too, though, for those of you, again, in management positions, if you have an environment where you're hearing laughter in your staff people, that is usually most of the time a very good sign. People laugh when they're happy. Right there, you hear crying when people are not happy. No, but I'm serious. If you have an environment where your people are enjoying their work and enjoying their coworkers to the point where the laughter can happen, that's a good sign. That's a very good sign.
Yes, and speaking of that, Jill Rady, in addition to the sincerity comments, added that, or if I throw stuff at them, they'll keep serving my goals. So I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
sure what she's throwing.
All right. Well, I just want to have a couple more thoughts as we wrap up here. Is keep in mind that, again, to reiterate this, a word of thanks is more valuable than money, benefits, or company events. A word of thanks costs you nothing really, but your time and your effort. But it does not have to cost a lot of money to show appreciation, but you do have to make it intentional. You have to take the time out of your busy day and all your to-do lists and make sure you make that decision to say, you know what, I'm going to build into my people in this way so they know how much I genuinely appreciate them. Because again, as a former manager and a supervisor and a director myself, I can't do all the work myself. That's why we have hired people to help us or volunteers to help us. So if we don't show them how much we need them, they'll do what I just said at the very beginning. They will leave you because people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. So thank you so much. We're going to stop a little early today. Thank you for attending our
Well,
webinar.
can we
Yes.
do a couple more, Chad?
Sure. Go ahead, Wolf. We got time.
They are great comments. They're short.
Okay.
Ann Brownell said one of the best things you said was people don't quit a job, they quit a manager. Very good observation. Thank you. And Mary Niemola notes that moving from coworker to director was a tough transition and still can be. And she agrees that hearing that thank you and good job can help with that transition.
Sure can.
And Liz Seafelt over in Ashland said, thanks for all the great reminders, Chad. So, yeah, wonderful information. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, attendees. Happy spring. I hope we're not going to see any more snow, at least for a day or two. And if you have any questions, you can email Chad or me or Victoria. And like I said, I think, yeah, the PowerPoint should be going out. So,
Yep.
have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.